Furniture.ie.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Trippier gave it away and now Rashford is in behind. Rashford brings it into the area on his right foot, gets the shot off and scores! Marcus Rashford gives Manchester United the lead at Wembley. Firing low past Hugo Lloris, and Kieran Trippier's mistake in midfield this time is punished. Marcus Rashford, for the third Premier League game in a row, gives United the lead, and the revival under Solskjaer continues. A minute before half-time, it's Spurs 0, Manchester United 1.
Yeah, there we are, and they hung on, as we all know. Pat Nevin on the line, hello.
Hello, I love that mix, by the way.
Very
Manchester
nice.
Band,
Yeah.
Man United. It actually worked brilliantly. I'm impressed by that.
Didn't it? That was a good 5 minutes of our meeting this afternoon. How will we combine the Pat Nevin music with the commentary we have? And actually, it was a simple conversation. It's very nice.
Well, I'm impressed. Well done. And by the way, they were quite good as well, United, weren't they?
Yeah. So I mean, we were just throwing it around here at the start of the show. So we have seen the good vibes aspect to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. We've seen the man management. We've seen in some respects overlooked the understanding and the respect for the traditions of the club. You know, it's been interesting to see how quickly they've been restored in some respects. And now, Pat, maybe exemplified best by that goal, we have seen some tactical acumen as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, the speed in which Pogba gets the ball out of his feet to make the pass was brilliant. It's kind of one of those ones where it looks like a really good pass, and anyone can see that. But the ball's come to him, and he's moved it so quickly. He's very little backlift because he knows he's getting closed down, and still plays a brilliant ball in, knowing the pace that Rashford's got. So all in all, yeah, brilliant goal. But you're absolutely right about the attitudes. You know, looking at all those players. You know, yeah, he's getting more out of Rashford, 100%, get more out of Pogba. But look at Martial. Is that the same guy? It's incredible to see the difference. I've said to you many times before, you know, I watched him over in France and thought that's a top quality player. You know, more of a kind of a false 9/10, not a winger in a million years. But he's been moved to more centrally, so he can basically float there and look for spaces, but when he gets the ball and he runs at people, it just looks at a completely different dynamic with that player as well. So if you're getting very good players and getting much, much more out of them very quickly, and on top of that, just saying to them, you know, I think you're pretty good. This club's all about attacking. Go and show you what you're good at. And there's very few things that any sportsman likes better than being told, go and express yourself. Because, you know, the belief and confidence that comes with that's incredible. And you can see it coursing through that. Having said all that, to be fair, in another day, they probably should have been beaten with that amount of chances. And De Gea was absolutely brilliant.
Yes, he timed his Superman display very nicely from a Solskjaer point of view. When we talk about the formation, Jesse Lingard said in Dubai, we practiced all week that formation in Dubai. And said that was very much the plan, to go out with the split strikers and Lingard. I don't know if it's a diamond or not, but at the front of that diamond at times. So Solskjaer clearly identified the fact that Spurs pushed their fullbacks up the pitch and came up with this plan. Like, it's very easy for me in retrospect to understand it and to see it, and you could see it actually in the match as it transpired as well. But I mean, that would have required a fair bit of creativity, a bit of thought. Like that was promising stuff from Solskjaer, wasn't it?
And a good bit of memory as well. I mean, the diamond formation was, you know, really popular years ago. It kind of fell out of favour when everybody went to the 4-2-3-1. And it's, you know, there's teams come back to, you know, all these systems are actually versions of the same thing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Unless it's three at the back, you know, a 4-4-2 can be played in a number of ways. You know, it can be played like a 4-3-1-2 or a 4-1-3-2. But in actual fact, it's all versions of that different system. But if you've got the right players to play as a diamond, and really that's the best system to suit Pogba, because he comes in from an attacking wide midfield area, and you have to find out where the opposition, you know, have any weaknesses or where their strengths are, and see if you can nullify them. That all makes sense, but I'm not going to get completely carried away.
Yeah, okay.
It's been a great run, but they should have scored about 4 goals. Spurs had brilliant chances, and on another day, Harry Kane scores 2 or 3 of them, and then the questions would have been totally different. They would have been, well, he's a bit naive, he's got that wrong, etc.
Yeah.
So it's one of those days where, yeah, once again, we're still applauding Solskjaer. he's got a lot of things right. He's getting the best out of players. Tactical genius, I'll kind of leave that for the moment. I think we'll have to wait and see. He got it right in that occasion, but problem is, we're at the top of the Premier League. You have to keep on getting it right all the time. But he's got them back. They're part of the conversation now. They are the leveling points with Arsenal. So, Chelsea aren't flying at the moment. They're just about, keeping going at the rate they were going before, but not flying away. So they're definitely, part of the conversation getting into that top four. And on top of that, it's kind of good to be chasing when you're on a roll.
Yeah.
And the fans are loving it as well. So they're riding the crest of that wave. And it's fantastic just now. And everyone's happy for Solskjaer, because I've still not met anyone who doesn't like him.
No. Pochettino is the heir apparent, the man in demand, obviously. Darren Fletcher was on Match of the Day 2 last night, and he was just asked why did Spurs dominate the second half so comprehensively, and one of the main reasons he gave was, they switched to a 4-2-3-1 and the fullbacks stopped pressing up as high. They had wingers in front of them, and they were just that touch more defensive. So if we accept that for a second, then I'm struggling to understand why it took Pochettino so long to recognise what Man United were up to, because there were several occasions in the first half before the goal where your two centre-halves were left in a 2v2 with Martial and Rashford. They were clearly staying up the pitch, and you don't want your centre-halves in a 2v2 with Martial versus Rashford. So I'm kind of wondering why the heir apparent Pochettino didn't shut that down a bit more quickly in that game.
So part of the reason is they were the home side. They're trying to, impose themselves on the opposition. And if you caught, man and man a couple of times, you kind of shrug your shoulders and say, right, we'll have to deal with it. The simple thing is to get one of your fullbacks to just cover a little bit. It's not rocket science, that one. And maybe as a player on the field, I would suspect my defenders should be able to read that.
Okay.
Somebody to drag him back and say, look, hey, hang back a bit. We're getting exposed here a little bit. So that, but I think probably more the fact that he expected his team to, take their part of the game. You know what it's like in games? If you react negatively and defensively sometimes, it can actually just hand more to the opposition. I don't think he wanted to do that. I think he wanted to slug it out a little bit with them, feeling he had better players, and more specifically, they were at home. Of course, they don't want a draw. Wasn't much good to either team, so they were kind of happy to slug it out a little bit. And again, Pochettino might say to you that same phrase. Well, in the end, I adapted it and still did enough that we should have won the game with the opportunities we had. So it was a good game. It was an entertaining game. Yeah. It was an exciting game, and it was all. It could have been any story at all with 5 minutes to go. Anything could have happened. If Spurs would have got two late goals, would any of one been shocked? I wouldn't have been with the chances that were created. Yeah. So it's one of those ones where there's a lot of games this season where I've watched, and a lot of people want to take a lot out of one game. That was just one game. Spurs are a tough team to do that with. You watched them very closely when they played Chelsea recently, and hammered Chelsea because they got the tactics brilliantly right. I mean, absolutely superbly. They killed Chelsea that day, and it was 3. It could have been much, much more. But then they tried to do exactly the same thing against Chelsea 2 weeks later in the Carabao Cup. And although they won 1-0, they were really lucky, and Chelsea were the better side. So, tactics have to be adaptable, and that's one of the great things I'm liking about the Premier League just now. There's a lot of coaches out there that are adapting, not just game to game, but throughout games as well. By the way, Sarri isn't. But everybody else seems to be adapting and changing.
I suppose I should declare an interest. I was a childhood Manchester United fan, so when Solskjaer scored in Barcelona, it was the greatest moment in my 13 and a half years on the planet at that stage. You may need to rein me in over the coming months as I say Solskjaer for the main job.
I wouldn't rein you in. If he keeps it going like this, I would be shouting and screaming for him to get it. There's no downside to that, I don't think, because he epitomises what the club's about. You don't get overexcited, because there's still big questions to be asked. They're going to get beat at some point. How do they react to that? How does he react to that? They have a day where it's not right. He will make one or two tactical mistakes. Every manager does. How do they react to that? And that's the big things. But you can't make a better start than he's made just now. Can I make you jealous about that Champions League final?
Don't tell me you were there.
I was on the halfway line, 2 seats back. 2 rows back, and I'd been asked to go by the chap who was buying the club, and that I was going to, and I'm going to very quickly tell you this. He'd never been to a game before.
God.
And I said to him, "You got to go to a game before you buy this football club." And he says, "There's a game tomorrow." And I went, "Yes, I think you'll find that's the Champions League final." And he goes, "Yeah, I've got 2 tickets if you want them." I went, "What?" And then I said to him, "You'll never get a hotel." And he says, "Well, I part own the hotel in the stadium."
Of course he does.
I went, "Right. There's no chance you'll get a flight this late. The game's tomorrow." He says, "We'll take the Lear."
Did he buy the club?
Well, the mad thing is, it all came down to that Solskjaer goal, because with like 88 minutes, there was 2 mates there with him as well. And they said, "This is rubbish, we're off."
Yeah, not really.
And they
wow.
walked away.
Gosh.
And I said to him, "If you walk now, I'm not going to that club." And he stayed. 5 minutes later, he was addicted to football.
Fair enough. I mean,
It's quite a night, wasn't it?
that would do it. Yeah, George Best famously left before the 2 goals actually on the night. On Spurs and the missed chances, I noticed in the commentary at the time, Gary Neville was absolutely praising De Gea, but was also sort of saying, you know, they're within saving range. They're within certain parameters for him to get to, actually, and he wasn't so sure about the Spurs finishing. So maybe your thoughts on that, and I don't know, maybe when you've got a great keeper like De Gea in goal, it puts more pressure on the striker too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the times, everyone will tell you the same thing, it's about his positioning. You know, the ball comes straight to you a lot of the time because you've put yourself in exactly the right place to be. I think his reactions were fantastic with his feet. Many times, particularly tall goalkeepers, if you keep it hard and low, it goes by them. They don't move their feet quickly enough. And it just maybe 6 inches, you need to move it and it reacts. It cannot be a fluke that he makes so many close range saves with his feet. It can't be a fluke anymore. He's just so brilliant at it. So I'm certainly on De Gea's side to say that he had a brilliant game. Okay, he's not flown into the top corner and, you know, clipped one over the bar with all the photographers grinning. You know, but that's not what all goalkeeping's about. And I think all the other stuff that he did, they were fantastic. And if you're, you know, sometimes if you are, you know, 1-on-1 with a goalkeeper, and you've got maybe a couple of seconds or a second or two, which is an eternity really, to think about it, there's a big difference if you've got a keeper that you think isn't that good and isn't going to read it, and one who is brilliant. And I've found myself in that position before. They get inside your head sometimes, and that's what they're trying to do. And the more saves he makes like that, almost the harder you try and you snatch at things, I think, or some people do. And it's just really unusual to see Harry Kane to some degree doing it as well. But I would put it more down to good saves. Right,
okay. I must actually, now that you mentioned it, Nev Southall was on about 18 months ago, 2 years ago.
I was thinking about him, by the way, when I said that.
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't like to go against him in training every day. But he said he preferred Lloris as a keeper. He didn't actually, at the time we were speaking to him, he didn't especially like De Gea's use of his feet. He felt it was suspect technique. And I was just thinking there, we should get him on and ask him to analyse yesterday, because it looked to me like, as you said, the feet were about the only way he was going to save some of those shots.
I tend not to argue too much with Neville, because he will find me and he'll get me. He'll turn out my house and beat me up in a very funny way. But yeah, I think Neville's a very different type of goalkeeper. You know, most of Neville's were saves were hands, or positioning himself and reacting well with his hands and getting down and reading you. I must have told you the story before about Neville playing in goals. We were doing a drill, 20-yard shots, and there was players like Sharpie and Sheeds and Tony Cottee and myself. And after 20 minutes, we hadn't scored, and he wasn't using his hands.
Wow.
He was reading everything with his head and his shoulders and diving up. Stunning. He was unbelievable. So a different type of keeper. De Gea has his methods, has his way. And it was brilliant. He was in top form on that occasion. So I'm taking nothing away from him, but I am saying on another day, they could have been well beaten in Manchester United on the day. But, you know, take the luck when you get it. And that's a bit of thing about Solskjaer. Remember him coming on a lot of games, and sometimes you think, what is it Ole Gunnar Solskjaer actually does, apart from scoring goals sometimes? And then you think, actually, that's quite a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And it was just, he was astonishing at it, absolutely astonishing at it. But I remember people used to say, he's getting a bit lucky. He always seems to come on when people are tired, and the chances always come. After a while, it's not luck. You're there for a reason.
Yeah. I guess maybe isn't that the interesting parallel with his management now? We're waiting to see. over a more sustained period. Is there a bit of luck going on, or is he going to have this kind of luck routinely? Jesse Lingard was saying in Dubai that Solskjaer spent a lot of time with Rashford, working on finishing and talking about finishing, which was interesting. I guess a broader theme for Manchester United, which has really struck me, is, you know, the fact that it is Fellaini on the bench and Mata on the bench and Lukaku now only coming off the bench. It's amazing how quickly he's managed to banish the Van Gaal Mourinho approach and go back to those broader 50, 60, 70-year traditions at the club of pace and attacking football. Like, he's almost instantly restored that. And it feels, you know, almost embedded now for the rest of the season and beyond. Like, I heard Gary Neville speaking briefly after the game yesterday, and he was saying the club now should never go back to the whims of one given manager, that the philosophy of the club should be respected properly, because it hasn't been post-Ferguson.
Yeah, you could say that to some degree. I think there was different problems with each different manager. And certainly the extreme version of it was Jose Mourinho, because he took it away from the whole concept of how Manchester United are as an ethos and an ethic. So, yes, I can see that to some degree, but every decision is different. By the way, can I go slightly back to one thing about Solskjaer? When we first talked about him coming in, everyone was talking about, remember the failure at Cardiff? And I said, I took nothing from that, not a thing from his time at Cardiff, because he basically took a basket case, and nobody could have turned that and made it any good at all. So I took nothing from that, and he was there a short time as well. The rest of his career as a manager has been very good. So when you hear him talking, and I've heard various players now talking about various things that he's done, you know, his words that he said to Lukaku, the direction you're playing, very simple things. They all sound perfectly sensible. So when I'm saying about Solskjaer, I'm not saying it's not going to work. I have a suspicion it probably will, and B, I really want it to work as much as anything else. But I'm not going to say it has definitely worked yet. That was the one thing I would say about that. Talking about that attitude, it's just all the pace is there. You know, all the players like Martial always were pacey. Rashford, you know, Pogba's got plenty of that energy about him. And it's just saying to them, use it all. Whereas you talk about Mata, love him as many of us do. Energy and pace isn't what he's all about. It's about something else. And you're right, it's a completely different attitude. And the lovely thing about it is, it's nothing like Manchester City. So now, if they do get back to being a powerhouse Manchester United, it's going to be a completely different way, which is going to make it brilliant, because you're going to have two totally different styles against each other. Yeah,
it's a really interesting point. Our time is always shorter at 7:30 than it is after 9. Is there anything very, very briefly, so I'm not kicked out the door here for going too far over time, from the weekend that you wanted to mention? Really
quick, I was at the Chelsea game. You know, I always go on about David Luiz. I'm pleading that some people start seeing the light quite soon. He was absolutely phenomenal again. But one thing that was noticeable, Jorginho got a lot of stick from Chelsea fans and from the manager for being closed down, and the centre forward Rondon closed him down. Problem is, I think that's what was meant. I think Sarri's delighted with it, because when they all closed him down, what happens? Luiz gets so much time in the ball, and he's played double the amount of through balls of anybody else in the league this season, and they're leading to goals now. Palace, and then this goal that he's set up this week, he should have been 2 more, because the linesman got it wrong a couple of times. David, he has the odd bad day, but he's genius.
Okay, beautiful note to finish on. Pat, thanks a million. See you next week.
Pleasure.
Off the ball on News Talk.
At Blackrock Clinic, we offer direct access to our expert team of endoscopy specialists. So if you're concerned about a stomach or bowel issue, we can quickly find the cause and whether it's